Hello and welcome to another episode of today's GK. I am Pooja Dwivedi, and in this segment we are going to discuss all about objective questions related to today's news. So, first question is practice question, right? Consider the following statements. The index of industrial production measures the growth in core sector industries. The IIP is compiled by the National Statistical Office. Renewable energy sector is one of the industries in the core sector. We have to select the correct statement. Yes, IIP does measure the growth in the core industry, core sectors of the industry. And yes, it is compiled by the National Statistical Office under the Ministry of Statistics and Program Implementation. And of course, if we talk about renewable energy, it is not one of the core sectors in the industry. So only the first and the second statements are correct. The correct answer to this question would be option C. In the calculation of the index of industrial production, the data of the following 8 sectors is measured. 8 core sectors comprise 40.27% of the weight of the items included in the index of industrial production. It is compiled and published monthly by the National Statistical Office, Ministry of Statistics and Program Implementation, and the 8 core sector industries that are measured under IIP in decreasing order of their weightage. Refinery products, then electricity, steel, coal, crude oil, natural gas, cement, fertilizer. Moving on, consider the following statements. Panchayats, Extension to Scheduled Areas Act, that is PISA, cover these scheduled areas in the 73rd Constitutional Amendment, and the term Gram Sabha is defined in the Constitution of India under Article 243B. We have to select the correct statement. So, the second statement is correct, that the Gram Sabha, the term Gram Sabha is defined in the Constitution of India under Article 243 Clause B. But the first statement is incorrect on the grounds that PISA, it covers those areas, scheduled areas, which are not in the 73rd, which are not considered scheduled areas by the 73rd Constitutional Amendment Act. So, the first being incorrect, the second being correct. The correct answer would be option B2 only. It has been recently reported that the PISA Act, which was supposed to uphold the traditional decision-making process, has so far not been fully implemented in the true spirit. And PISA is a law enacted by the Government of India to cover scheduled areas which are not covered in the 73rd Constitutional Amendment. The term Gram Sabha, we have already discussed about it. Moving forward. Consider the following about food fortification. Hypervitaminosis, toxicity, loss of dietary diversity. Which of the above effects can be termed as an adverse impact of food fortification? So, food fortification is a process through which the food, the regular consumable on a regular basis food, is fortified by certain vitamins and minerals. The vitamins and minerals are enmeshed into the food. So, there are certain adverse events to that as well. So, it actually has the adverse events of hypervitaminosis, toxicity, and loss of dietary diversity. So, option D is correct. Recent studies published in the Lancet journal have shown that both anemia and vitamin A deficiencies are overdiagnosed, meaning that mandatory fortification could lead to hypervitaminosis. Hypervitaminosis is a condition of abnormally high storage level of vitamins, which can lead to various symptoms such as overexcitement, irritability, or even toxicity. Undernourishment in India is caused by monotonous cereal-based diets with low consumption of vegetables and animal protein. Adding 1 or 2 synthetic chemical vitamins and minerals will not solve the larger problem, and undernourished population can lead to toxicity. A 2010 study showed iron fortification causing gut inflammation and pathogenic gut microbiota profile in undernourished children. Moving ahead, once the biofortified food like iron fortified rice is sold as the remedy to anemia, the value and the choice of naturally iron-rich foods like millets, varieties of green leafy vegetables, and flesh foods get suppressed. This leads to loss of dietary diversity. which is healthier and more cost-effective way to fight malnutrition. Moving on, consider the following statements. CST-100 Starliner is a spacecraft for a mission to the moon. Boeing's uncrewed Starliner Orbital Flight Test 2 was to be launched from Cape Canaveral Space Force Station. We have to select the correct statement. CST-100 Starliner. Yes, this was to be launched from Cape Canaveral Space Force Station, but has now again been delayed. But it is not for the moon, but lower Earth orbit. Okay. So first is incorrect, second is correct. The correct answer is option B. The launch of Boeing's uncrewed Starliner Orbital Flight Test 2, OFT-2, which was supposed to lift off from the Space Launch Complex 41 on Cape Canaveral Space Force Station in Florida on 3rd of August, has been postponed once again. This is a spacecraft to Earth's lower orbit. Consider the following statements regarding Permanent Forum of People of African Descent. It is a new body to be established by the African Union. The forum's establishment comes during the International Decade for People of African Descent, which began on January 1st to 2020 and ends on December 31st to 2030. We have to select the correct statements. It is a body to be formed by the United Nations and not African Union. So the first statement is incorrect. The second statement is also incorrect because the forum's establishment, it came during the International Decade for African Descent, which began on January 1st, 2015. Here it's 2020 now. So it's 2015 and it ends on 31st December 2024 and not 2030. Okay. So the correct answer to this question would be option D, neither 1 nor 2. UN creates permanent body to address challenges of racism. The United Nations General Assembly approved a resolution to establish a permanent forum of people of African descent to provide expert advice on addressing the challenges of racism, racial discrimination, xenophobia and intolerance. Xenophobia is phobia or fear of people who do not belong to a particular region. Suppose I am phobic or I have a fear of Americans coming to Allahabad. So that is something that is supposed to be xenophobic. Okay, I am xenophobic then. Moving on. The forum's establishment comes during the International Decade for People of African Descent, established by the General Assembly, which began on January 1st, 2015 and ends on December 31st, 2024. Consider the following statements. Under Article 72 of the Constitution, the governor of a state shall have the power to grant pardons. Governor's power to pardon overrides a section 433A in the Code of Criminal Procedure. A convict is free to choose between the president and the governor for pardon. So, we have to select the correct statement. Okay. Now, under Article 72 of the Constitution, the president has the power, but the governor has the power under Article 161 to grant pardons. Okay. The second and the third statements, these two statements are correct. The correct answer to this question would be option C, 2 and 3. Recently, the Supreme Court held that the governor of a state can pardon prisoners, including death row ones, even before they have served a minimum 14 years of prison sentence. Under Article 161 of the Constitution, the governor of the state shall have the power to grant pardons, reprieves, respites, or remissions of punishment, or to suspend, remit, or commute the sentence of a person convicted of any offense against any law relating to a matter to which the executive power of the state extends. Governor's power to pardon overrides a section 433A in the Code of Criminal Procedure, and a convict is free to choose between the president and the governor for pardon. Moving on, consider the following statements with respect to net zero emissions. India is now the planet's 4th largest emitter of CO2 behind China and European Union and the US. The Kingdom of Bhutan is already carbon negative, and energy sector is the largest emitter of greenhouse gas, followed by transport and agriculture. So we have to select the incorrect statement. The Kingdom of Bhutan, yes, it's a carbon negative state. That means it absorbs more carbon than it emits. Okay. First statement is incorrect because India is the third largest emitter of CO2, not the fourth. And third statement is also incorrect because after energy, we have the largest emitter in the form of industry, then forestry. Okay. So first and the third are incorrect. The correct answer to this question would be option C, 1 and 3 only. In a recent development, charity Oxfam has warned the government and businesses hoping to plant trees and restore forests to reach net zero emissions must limit such efforts to avoid driving up food prices in the developing world, because less and less the agricultural area would be available for farming and cropping practices, the more will be the price of the food, because population is increasing, the demand will increase, but the supply will not match the demand. So agroforestry is something that we can look at. That means having a cropping pattern along with the plantation of trees. Okay. Net zero emissions, they refer to achieving an overall balance between greenhouse gas emissions produced and greenhouse gas emissions taken out of the atmosphere. India's per capita CO2 emissions are at 1.8 tons per person in 2015. These are around a ninth of those in the US and around a third of the global average of 4.8 tons per person. India overall, however, is now the planet's third largest emitter of CO2 behind China and USA, and the Kingdom of Bhutan is already carbon negative. Sectors are included as in the following orders from the largest to the smallest: energy, then industry, forestry, transport, agriculture, building. Moving on, consider the following statements with respect to Social Security Code 2020. The SS Code, the Social Security Code 2020, amalgamates and rationalizes the provisions of 8 existing central labor laws. Under the SS Code, the provision of maternity benefit has not been made universal. We have to select the correct statements. Both of these statements are actually correct. Correct answer to this question would be option C, both 1 and 2. Direct transfers of money into bank accounts of informal workers and an urban employment guarantee scheme were among the recommendations of the Parliamentary Standing Committee on Labour in its report on the impact of the pandemic on rising unemployment and job loss. The SS Code 2020 merges existing social security laws and attempts to include informal workers within the ambit of social security administration. The SS Code 2020 amalgamates and rationalizes the provisions of the 8 existing central labor laws, and for employees' state insurance, the existing employee threshold has been withdrawn. Under the SS Code, the provision of maternity benefit has not been made universal. Now, maternity benefit is presently applicable for establishment employing 10 workers or more. Moving on, eDNA, recently seen in the news, is related to DNA, which is stored electronically, DNA sequencing, which could be useful in conducting elections, or environmental DNA, or none of the above. So, eDNA is related to environmental DNA. We'll know about that. It's option C, and recently scientists have found in research that environmental DNA is effective in the calculation of marine biodiversity. This refers to DNA that can be extracted from environmental samples such as water, soil or feces without first isolating any target organism. Moving on, it is nuclear or mitochondrial DNA that is released from an organism into the environment. Moving on to the next question. Consider the following statements. Joblessness or unemployment rate is defined as the percentage of unemployed persons in labor force. The UR was 20.9%, that is, unemployment rate was 29.9% in April to June 2020. The 8th Periodic Labor Force Survey showed an NSO launched PLFS in April 2019. We have to select the correct statement. Yes, joblessness or unemployment rate is defined as the percentage of unemployed persons in the labor force. And also, according to the 8th PLFS, the UR unemployment rate was 20.9% in April to June 2020. The first ever strictest lockdown was imposed during this time period because of the COVID-19 pandemic. So it was supposed to happen. Then NSO actually launched PLFS in the year 2017. Okay, this is a computer-based survey for employment and unemployment. Okay, so we had to select the correct ones, right? So the correct answer would be option A, 1 and 2. Unemployment rate rose to 13.3% in July to September 2020 as compared to 8.5% in the year ago period, according to the PLFS by National Statistical Office. Joblessness or unemployment rate, we have already discussed this, so we shall move forward. And we have also discussed the second one. The third one, NSO launched PLFS in April 2017. Now, as per the survey, labor force participation rate for all ages was 37% in September quarter of 2020, up from 36.8% in the same period a year ago. Okay, so labor force participation rate is actually the ratio or the part of the population that is employed, that is in the employable age, and they are looking for opportunities of employment. So after the COVID-19 induced lockdown, many labor intensive and contact based sectors were closed down. So people started looking for self-employment opportunities, and they were self-employed. So seldom it has been seen. In one of our in-news series, we had also covered about that. Because of the rise in the distress, according to the PLFS only, because of the rise in distress because of COVID-19 induced lockdown, many people started becoming self-employed, and that is why they were included in the employed segment. Okay, moving on. Consider the following statements with respect to the report Hunger Hotspots, August to November 2021. The report has been released by the Food and Agriculture Organization in collaboration with the World Health Organization. Ethiopia and Madagascar are the world's newest highest alert hunger hotspots. We have to select the statement which is or are incorrect. Now, hunger hotspots from August to November 2021. This has been released by Food and Agriculture Organization in collaboration with World Food Program, not World Health Organization. So the first statement is incorrect. But the second statement is correct, that Ethiopia and Madagascar are the world's newest highest alert hunger hotspots. So the second being correct. First is incorrect. The correct answer is option A, one only. Recently, the Food and Agriculture Organization and the World Food Program released a report by the name of Hunger Hotspots, August to November 21. Ethiopia, Madagascar, South Sudan, Northern Nigeria and Yemen are among 23 countries where acute food insecurity will worsen from August through November 2021. Ethiopia and Madagascar are the world's newest highest alert hunger hotspots, and Ethiopia faces a devastating food emergency linked to ongoing conflict in the Tigray region. Moving on to the practice question. Consider the following segments. Break. Consider the following countries: North Korea, Myanmar, Chad, India. Which of the above countries are included in the UN's list of hunger hotspots? Okay, so I hope you can answer it correctly in the comment segment. That's it for today. Tomorrow we shall meet again with another segment. Until then, stay updated, and thank you so much for watching.